US to impose 100% tariff on imported semiconductor products. Malaysia condemns Israel plan to fully occupy Gaza. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Shuhaid Arifin and you're watching World Today. King of Malaysia, His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim, expresses that his state visit to Russia reflects his sincere wish to strengthen ties and cooperation between the two nations. His Majesty said Malaysia regarded Russia as a trusted and important partner. Sultan Ibrahim stated that diplomatic relations between the two countries have extended over 5 decades, having been officially established in April 1967. Malaysia was among the earliest ASEAN nations to establish ties with Moscow. His Majesty believes that this will continue to shape the direction of the relationship between the two nations for the benefit of people. Sultan Ibrahim made the remarks during an official meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin following a state welcoming ceremony at the Grand Kremlin Palace. Accompanying His Majesty were Defence Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Khalid Nordin, who's also Minister in attendance, Foreign Ministry Secretary General Datuk Seri Amran Muhammad Zain, and Malaysian Ambassador to Russia Datuk Chong Lun Lai. On a different note, Russian President Vladimir Putin said political dialogue between Moscow and Kuala Lumpur is well established, with ongoing contacts between various agencies. Putin mentioned that the two nations engage in communication at both the governmental and parliamentary levels. The Russian president also highlighted Malaysia's role in the Russian Islamic World Strategic Development Group, which has become an effective tool for cooperation and mutual understanding between Russia and the countries of the Islamic world. Putin said during a meeting with His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim, the King of Malaysia. Putin also warmly welcomed Sultan Ibrahim and his delegation to the Kremlin. During the meeting, Putin said he had visited Malaysia 3 times and had fond memories of the visits. The Russian leader believed that the Malaysian king's visit would be fruitful. Sultan Ibrahim is on his maiden state visit to Russia until 10th August at the invitation of Putin. This marks the first state visit by a Malaysian head of state to Russia. The United States will impose a tariff of about 100% on semiconductor chips imported into the country. President Donald Trump stated that this would not be applicable to companies that have committed to manufacturing in the United States.
So I just want everyone to know that, and I didn't even tell you that inside. We discussed the concept, but I didn't. So it's a big factor. So 100% tariff on all chips and semiconductors coming into the United States. But if you've made a commitment to build, or if you're in the process of building, as many are, there is no tariff.
However, the details regarding the plan, including the amount of U.S. manufacturing required for a company to be eligible for the tariff exemption, were not immediately clear. Trump had previously signaled that the duties on chips and semiconductors, which have become key components in virtually every industry, could come as soon as next week. Trump's tariff on semiconductor follows attempts by the Biden administration to similarly create a more robust tech manufacturing presence in the US, which has lagged behind Taiwan and China in semiconductor production. Meanwhile, in response to the semiconductor tariff announced by Trump, Minister of International Trade and Industry, Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said that Malaysia will continue to engage with the United States Department of Commerce to seek clarification on the matter. He added that the implementation mechanism had yet to be finalized and may change according to the decisions by Trump's administration.
Perlu ditekankan bahawa sehingga kini Kerajaan Amerika Syarikat masih belum lagi mengumumkan secara terperinci mekanisme pelaksanaan tarif tersebut. Dan berdasarkan maklumat semasa, pengecualian bukanlah berdasarkan negara, tetapi mungkin diberikan kepada syarikat yang melabur secara langsung di Amerika Syarikat tanpa mengambil kira lokasi syarikat itu di negara lain.
According to data for 2024, the total export of E&E sector from Malaysia to United States has reached more than 119 billion ringgit, with the semiconductor export alone made up 60.6 billion ringgit of the total export. United States President Donald Trump issued an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods, citing New Delhi's continued imports of Russian oil. This sharply escalating tensions between the two countries after trade talks collapsed. The new measure raises tariffs on some Indian goods to as high as 50%, among the steepest faced by any U.S. trading partner. The move is expected to hit key Indian export sectors, including textiles, footwears, and gems, and marks the most serious downturn in US-India relations. India's External Affairs Ministry called the decision extremely unfortunate, noting that many other countries are also importing Russian oil in their national economic interests. Meanwhile, Trump also said he could announce further tariffs on China, similar to the 25% duties announced earlier on India over its purchases of Russian oil. Last week, U.S. Treasury Secretary warned China that it could also face new tariffs if it continued buying Russian oil. Malaysia has condemned in no uncertain terms the Israeli Zionist regime's latest decision to launch a full military takeover of Gaza. Malaysia also calls on all nations to unequivocally reject Israel's apartheid policies. In a statement, the Malaysian Foreign Ministry stated, this calculated and unconscionable move signals a clear intention by the regime to permanently occupy Palestinian lands. This act is a blatant breach of international law and a disregard for the fundamental principles of human rights and justice. After 22 months of relentless bombings, siege, and the forced displacement of over 90% of the Palestinian population, the move is intended to put an end to the two-state solution. The ministry said if Israel is allowed to continue, its action will deny the rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Malaysia also said immediate and concrete actions must be taken towards recognizing the state of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders. Malaysia also calls on all nations to secure a permanent ceasefire, the full withdrawal of Israeli Zionist regime's forces from Gaza. It is imperative to immediately end all blockade of humanitarian access and ensure unimpeded access to humanitarian aid and the full entry of the State of Palestine as a member of the United Nations. Greek Foreign Minister Giorgos Grapatridis met with his Egyptian counterpart Badr Abdelati in Athens on Wednesday for talks on Gaza, migration and other issues. Abdelati condemned that he called Israel's genocide in Gaza and urged international action to halt the violence and ensure unrestricted humanitarian aid to the war-torn enclave on brink of famine. Grapatridis reaffirmed Greece's support for a two-state solution and endorsed the Arab-led Gaza reconstruction plan spearheaded by Egypt.
Η Ελλάδα παραμένει σταθερά υπέρ της επανεκκίνησης της πολιτικής διαδικασίας με στόχο την λύση των δύο κρατών στη βάση των ψηφισμάτων του Οργανισμού Ηνωμένων Εθνών ως τη μόνη απάντηση στο διαχρονικό αίτημα των Παλαιστινίων για ανεξάρτητο κράτος και του Ισραήλ για ασφάλεια στην περιοχή. Στο πλαίσιο αυτό στηρίζουμε το αραβικό σχέδιο ανασυγκρότησης της Γάζας, στο οποίο η Αίγυπτος έχει πρωτοστατήσει.
He said the two ministers also agreed to bolster cooperation on irregular migration and maritime boundary talks with Libya, stressing the need for adherence to international law. Russia on Wednesday claimed that its forces had launched attacks on multiple Ukrainian targets, including natural gas transmission systems, while Ukraine reported that it had hit Russian targets, including command posts and artillery systems. Russia's Ministry of Defense said in its latest briefing that its forces continued to advance deep into Ukraine's defensive lines. A day clash with Ukrainian troops at different locations destroyed equipment, including tanks and armored vehicles, and struck warehouses storing drones and natural gas transmission systems. It said that Russian air defense systems intercepted and shot down 51 Ukrainian drones over regions, including Rostov Oblast in southern Russia and Bryansk Oblast in the west. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces said 143 clashes had taken place in frontline areas and its forces had attacked Russian command posts and artillery systems. The press office of the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine reported that Ukrainian forces shelled the area near the plant on Wednesday. The attacks caused no casualties, and the radiation levels in the surrounding areas remain normal, posing no threat to people or the environment. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Wednesday ruled out a bilateral trade agreement with Canada when asked about the possibility. She made the announcement following what she called a very good meeting with the top Canadian government ministers a day earlier.
Gracias, buen día. Hay acuerdos bilaterales, pero pues tenemos el tratado comercial con Estados Unidos, Canadá y México. También formamos parte de otro tratado donde está Canadá también, entonces no hace falta. A platicar del inicio.
Sheinbaum on Tuesday met in Mexico City with Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand and Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne to discuss how to address the still open issues of United States tariffs. As part of his aggressive trade negotiation strategy, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order last week, raising tariffs on Canadian products from 25% to 35%. He also gave Mexico a 90-day extension to reach a broad trade agreement. Apple to invest $100 billion in US. Stay with us. US President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that Apple will invest an additional $100 billion in the United States, a move which will expand the company's domestic investment commitment and could help it sidestep potential tariffs on iPhones. The new pledge brings Apple's total investment commitment in the US to $600 billion. Earlier this year, the company had announced it would invest $500 billion and hire 20,000 workers across the country over the next 4 years. The announcement centers on expanding Apple's supply chain and advanced manufacturing footprint in the US, but still falls short of Trump's demand that Apple begin making iPhones domestically.
It's companies like Apple, they're coming home. They're all coming home. And we want them to come home. They have to come home.
Trump described the move as a significant step toward the ultimate goal of ensuring that iPhones sold in America also are made in America. While the investment pledge is significant, analysts say the numbers align with Apple's typical spending patterns and echo commitments made during both the Biden administration and Trump's previous term. Poland's new president, Karol Nawrocki, on Wednesday vowed to change the country's constitution to protect its sovereignty in an address to parliament after his inauguration that set the scene for the battle with the government over democratic standards. Nationalist Nawrocki's speech opened what looks set to be a bitter conflict with the centrist Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who wants to move Warsaw closer to the European Union mainstream. He also planned to roll back contested judicial reforms implemented by the new president's allies, the Conservative Law and Justice PIS. The president has the power to veto laws, leading to the political deadlock already seen under the previous presidency of PIS ally Andrzej Duda, which ended on Wednesday. The president can also propose his own bills. However, a change of constitution requires a two-thirds majority in parliament. PIS are currently in opposition after losing power in 2023, but hope that Nawrocki's victory will provide them with an impulse ahead of the next parliamentary election in 2027. Five soldiers were shot in an active shooter incident at the Fort Stewart base in the U.S. state of Georgia. All 5 soldiers are in stable condition and are expected to recover. The Fort Stewart Hunter Army Airfield stated all soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. The suspect, an automated logistics sergeant with the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, who is now in custody. The shooting occurred at the suspect's workplace and involved his colleagues, but the motive remains unclear. He confirmed the suspect used a personal handgun, not a military weapon. White House spokesperson said U.S. President Donald Trump had been briefed and was monitoring the situation. Trump said the Army Criminal Investigation Division is on site and pledged the perpetrator would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk on Wednesday denounced the Rwanda-backed M23 militia, which he said had killed at least 319 civilians in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo in July. With Rwanda's support, the M23 has seized swathes of the mineral-rich Congolese East from the DRC's army since its resurgence in 2021, triggering a spiraling humanitarian crisis in a region already driven by 3 decades of conflict.
July's violence came only weeks after the Congolese government and the M23 signed a declaration of principle on 19th June, reaffirming their commitment to a permanent ceasefire following months of broken truces. Turk's own Human Rights Office said it had documented multiple attacks in North Kivu, South Kivu and Ituri provinces. In the agreement signed in Doha, the warring parties agreed to uphold their commitment to a permanent ceasefire, refraining from hate propaganda and any attempt to seize by force new positions. The deal includes a roadmap for restoring state authority in eastern DRC and an agreement for the two sides to open direct talks toward a comprehensive peace agreement. It followed a separate agreement signed in Washington by the Congolese government and Rwanda, which has a history of intervention in the eastern DRC stretching back to the 1990s. Rwandan President Paul Kagame and Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi are due to meet in the coming months to firm up the Washington agreement.
French firefighters on Wednesday continued battling to contain the country's largest wildfire in nearly 80 years as flames tore through the southern Aude region, scorching an area larger than Paris. One person died in the village of Saint-Laurent-de-la-Cabresse, about 30 kilometers from the city of Perpignan.
The fire, which is spread very rapidly through forests and villages, has burned down at least 25 houses, forcing residents and tourists to flee as many roads are closed. Prime Minister François Bayrou, in a visit to Saint-Laurent-de-la-Cabresse, described the situation as a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. So far, over 15,000 hectares have burned. According to Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau, that is similar to the total area that burned across all of France in several of the past years. He added this was the biggest area burnt by one single fire in France since 1949. The prefecture said that the fire was progressing very quickly and that nearly 2,000 firefighters were trying to bring it under control. Around 2,500 households in the area were currently without electricity. Firefighter spokesman Erin Brocardi said that the fire was spreading at a rate of 5.5 kilometers per hour.
Up next in sports, Al Hilal agreed to sign deal for Liverpool's Nunes Day 2.
Elektrik 5 bintang memberikan penjimatan 5 bintang.
Alright, kicking off our sports segment this afternoon. The national Under-20 U20 women's football squad began their AFC Under-20 Women's Asian Cup qualifying campaign on the wrong foot after failing 0-3 to Iran in a Group F match at the Kuala Lumpur Football Stadium last night.
Iran opened their account with a goal through its forward Mariam Dini in the 13th minute. She then added another goal to her name in the 28th minute. Substitute Asal Ghajarian sealed the national squad defeat through a goal in the dire moments of the game. National head coach Cameron Ng, however, praised the fighting spirit of national players who continued to stick to the game plan.
I'm not happy with the result. It hurts. I really didn't want to lose. But in terms of performance, effort, and what my players have given me, I cannot fault them.
The defeat places Malaysia third in the standings, ahead of the bottom place Guam, while Iran ranked second with 3 points behind group leaders Japan on goal difference.
Saudi Arabian champions Al Hilal have agreed a deal to sign Liverpool forward Darwin Núñez. The sale of Núñez would take Liverpool's income for transfer sales this window to nearly €200 million after the departures of Luis Diaz, Daryl Quanshan, Calvin Callagher, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Tyler Morton.
Núñez joined the Reds for an initial €75 million from Benfica 3 years ago, but has failed to live up to the price tag. The Uruguayan has scored 40 goals in 143 appearances, but slipped down the pecking order at Anfield under both Jurgen Klopp and Arne Slot. According to transfer specialist Fabrizio Romano, Al Hilal will pay an initial €53 million for the 26-year-old. Núñez was likely to play even less this season after Liverpool signed Hugo Ekitike and Florian Wirtz as part of €300 million spending spree. However, the club could still break the British transfer record by signing Isak, with Newcastle reportedly demanding a fee of up to €150 million for the Swedish striker. Núñez helped Liverpool lift the Premier League title last season, although his inconsistency in front of goal meant he often started games on the bench. However, landing the 26-year-old Uruguayan would be another coup for the Saudi Pro League, which has made a series of big-name signings over the last couple of years. Former Germany and Bayern Munich forward Thomas Müller has signed a season-long deal with Major League Soccer MLS side Vancouver Whitecaps. Müller, who turns 36 next month, decided to leave Bayern at the end of the last season after 25 years with German champions, helping them win 13 Bundesliga titles and 2 Champions League trophies. Müller had signed for the rest of the 2025 season, with the club holding an option to keep him in 2026 as a designated player, a status that allows MLS team to pay top salaries outside the league's salary cap. Müller made 131 appearances for Germany, scoring 45 goals, and was instrumental in their 2014 World Cup triumph. He scored 250 goals and registered 276 assists from 756 appearances for Bayern across all competitions. The playmaker helped Bayern reach the Club World Cup quarterfinals in the United States last month, where they lost to eventual runners-up Paris Saint-Germain.
In another transfer news, South Korean forward Son Heung-min has joined Los Angeles FC in a record-breaking Major League Soccer transfer, ending a decade-long stint at Tottenham Hotspur. Financial details of the transfer were not disclosed by either club, but The Athletic reported LAFC paid a fee in the region of $26.5 million for the 33-year-old.
Son, who joined Tottenham from Bayer Leverkusen in 2015, led the North London club to their first trophy in 17 years with a 1-0 win over Manchester United in the Europa League final in May. The former Spurs captain made 454 appearances for the team and scored 173 goals, winning the Premier League Golden Boot in the 2021-2022 season. Son, capped 134 times by South Korea, joins LAFC after an emotional farewell to Spurs during a friendly against Newcastle United at Seoul World Cup Stadium.
Leaving after the club that I spent most in the 10 years time, I think it was obviously very emotional because I gave it all, and I feel like inside of my deep side of me, I just say I was very empty, and because I felt like I gave it all. So, and then I just felt like I need a new chapter, I need a new challenge, which is that I choose LAFC, and obviously I'm very think we can say I'm old, but I still have a good physicality, good legs, and still have a good quality, I would say. And obviously I'm here to perform, but also that I want to give some advice to the young players that for improvement.
In tennis, despite seeing his run of serving success end, second-seeded Taylor Fritz charged into the semi-finals of the National Bank Open with a 6-3, 7-6 win over 6-seeded Andrei Rublev on Tuesday in Toronto. Fritz's next opponent will be fellow American Ben Shelton, the fourth seed, who registered a 6-3, 6-4 victory over Australian Alex de Minaur, the 9th seed in the same night.
After winning 41 consecutive service games dating back to his initial match in Toronto, Fritz squandered a match point at 5-4 in the second set, then lost the next 2 points as Rublev gained the break. Fritz never lost a point on serve in the tiebreaker to advance. A Wimbledon semi-finalist last month, Fritz is seeking his third title of the year, having prevailed at Stuttgart, Germany and Eastbourne, England. Shelton, who wound up with an 11-1 ace advantage, got the lone service break of the first set for a 4-2 lead. Shelton logged 2 breaks of de Minaur's serve in the third set, sandwiching de Minaur's lone break. The American then lost no more than 1 point in any of his final 3 service games. Shelton, 22, and Fritz, 27, will face off for just a second time. Fritz earned a 4-6, 6-4, 6-3 in a round of 64 match at Indian Wells, Cardiff in 2023.
And that concludes our bulletin this afternoon. In our top story, US to impose 100% tariff on imported semiconductors products. Stay tuned to RTM for more news update. And do join us tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. In case you missed us, you can always stream the news online on RTM Click's website and mobile app. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. From river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.